Welcome to GTM Confessions, where we share what it takes to be a go-to-market professional today. Because it's freaking hard and it's far from the glamorous picture that social media often paints. Consider this show your weekly go-to-market therapy session. I'm your host, Stephanie Cox. I have more than 20 years of experience and I've done almost everything go-to-market related in my career. In this episode, I chat with Lindsay Tjepkema, founder and CEO at Human Brands Win, about what it takes to create a brand, the constant battle between brand and demand, how to get your CEO and board to understand the value of brand, and so much more. Welcome to the show, Lindsay.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie.
I am looking forward to talking to you today all about brand, because I think one of the things that's really unique about the two of us is we've both been marketing leaders and we've both been CEOs. So we have kind of this interesting perspective of advocating for brand and its importance as a marketer, being the CEO and having different pressures from board members, VCs that kind of maybe don't find as much importance in brand as we would like. So I think maybe to get us started, let's talk about what a brand is, because I think there is a wide variety of opinions on what it means to really build a brand. So how do you think about it?
Okay, so first of all, I'm so glad that we're having this conversation. I'm excited for this because I just recorded a podcast, so I'm like all warmed up and I'm ready for some hot takes, because I will talk about brand all day long. You know that we've done this for years and years, but like as we record this, there's this conversation being had on the social medias about brand, and it's so triggering and it makes me so mad because it's like, really, we're still having this conversation. So to answer your question, what is brand? A brand is not just your logo. It is not colors. It is also not just messaging. It is how people experience a thing, a person, a company, an organization, a product, and it happens whether you're intentional about it or not. And so, yeah, I'll leave it there. It's how people experience something. That's your brand. It's what they say about you when you're not around.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that we see so oftentimes, especially from a marketing perspective, is everyone focuses on your logo, your brand color. Like, we even call it brand colors, right? What your website looks like, and assume that is the pretty stuff. When in reality, it's so much deeper than that. So when a company thinks about creating a brand for the first time, or maybe doesn't think about it and it just happens, what should be that kind of frame of reference for them? How do you go about figuring out what your brand actually even should be for your business, personally, or, product?
So, okay, you're right. So it exists either way. What should you do is start with, who is it for? Why are you doing it? That's where everything should begin. That's where your entire business should begin. And in the same exact moment that your business breathes its first breath, your brand is born. And so by being intentional about, who are we building this business for? Who are we serving? Why do we even exist? Those are the very first steps you take in building your brand, because it's like, okay, well then how do we say that? How do we show up that way? How do we make sure that the people this is for know why we exist, and that why we exist should be because of a problem they have? And so that it should be in lockstep, which is why it absolutely blows my mind that people think that brand is this fluffy other thing that you should deal with someday later when you reach some revenue milestone, or you just shouldn't deal with it at all because it doesn't matter. It's so foundational that it's the why. It's how you intentionally speak about why you exist in the first place.
And I don't think companies realize how hard it is to change it if you aren't intentional in the beginning, right? Like, to your point earlier when you were saying about it's about who you're for and why you exist. When you start to pivot, and we all see that in startup world, right? Lots of iterations. It's hard to get people to start to think about you differently and to evolve your brand into something that is a different market segment, a different product offering, a different, how you speak to people from a messaging perspective.
Yeah. And if you're not intentional about it, which happens way too often, especially with a whole bunch of people saying like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Then it's what people experience unintentionally, right? It ends up being the sum of, their interaction with this person, which is disjointed from the presentation that they saw and the paid ad that they see on LinkedIn, and none of it goes together. But that forms an opinion about who you are and why you're doing it and what you exist for, regardless. So yeah, you're right. Changing that opinion about who you're for and why you're doing it later is really, really tough. And it's really reckless because then you're putting the very foundation of your company in the hands of whoever your audience interacts with or whatever they interact with.
So let's say you're one of the few companies who actually decides to be intentional about this, although I think you and I would advocate every company should be intentional. It's obvious. But let's say you're getting ready to create a brand. I think a lot of times people assume that's a marketing only function and it's not broader than that. So if you are working with a company and telling them, hey, we're going to help establish what the foundation of your brand is, who should be in the room for those conversations?
Well, the very, very first thing is it depends. It depends on the size and of stage of the company. But let's start with like startups and let's say you're talking about it for the first time. So the founder should absolutely be there, 100%. To use a buzzword, like the key stakeholders, so the people who are making decisions about the business should be involved. That said, you also don't want too many voices in the room because then you start to get into like, well, I like green and all of the competitors in our space are using the word personalize. So it's like, it's a founder conversation. It's somebody who really knows and understands brand to help guide that conversation. And then the couple, that very small handful of other people who are foundational to the strategic direction of the business.
How do you often see, especially early stage companies, the founder brand and the company brand either coexist harmoniously or also potentially cause some irritation between the two?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked about that. Okay, so that's something that I'm working on a lot right now, which is with a lot of companies and clients. I typically see one of two things. Either it's in businesses that have a founder with a founder brand, because then there's like a lot of them that don't. The ones that do, it's typically one or two things. There's a founder with a founder brand that's completely separate. It's like, cool, they're an author and they're doing speaking and they stand for all these things, but it's doing so little for the business other than the halo effect. They're so separate from each other. You see this a lot when it's like a VC puts in a founder or a CEO and they kind of already have their thing. And then what ends up happening is that the company feels like something they're doing, not something that they really believe in. It's like, oh, well, this is something I'm doing right now. So that's one, is that they're very separate. The other one is the other extreme where they become completely enmeshed, which is, well, Susie is the CEO of this company and the company is Susie and like they are just one thing, which I see that a lot, and it's dangerous because then if Susie leaves or, not to get all political and stuff, but we'll just be political. Look what's happening with Tesla. I mean, if you have that enmeshed, good, bad, or otherwise, and something happens, it's really, really difficult for one to exist without the other. That also goes for founders that, like, I left my company, and if you are really, really enmeshed, it's really hard for people to see you outside of that business if you build the whole thing together. So those are two of the mistakes I see. And then the third one is not investing in a founder brand at all.
Which is also a huge problem that almost every company experiences as well, or they do it unintentionally and don't realize that it's still, once again, created if you do not do anything about it. People still have an opinion of it.
Exactly. 100%. There's that song that's like, if you choose not to decide, you still made a choice. Like, that's brand.
Exactly. So thinking about kind of starting that foundation, how long does it typically take? Because I think one of the misconceptions I hear a lot is, oh, we're going to hire an agency or we're going to get in a room and it's going to be this project plan and then we'll be done and then we'll move on and we'll have our brand. Wonderful, hands off. Now I know my colors. So what does that look like for you? Because you and I both know it's not that.
Just put your hex codes on a sticky note on the side of your monitor and then you're done. So the creation of it can happen in 20 minutes because you're documenting what you know, think, and feel, and you're a solopreneur and you're like, this is where I'm going to start. Or it can take 10 years, the project, the work. But to your point, it's ongoing. You are never, ever, 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 ever done building brand because because of how we defined it. It is how people experience you and your business and what you're doing. That's happening all the time, every minute of every day. And so it's how it's funny to me because this is literally how we exist as humans. Like you don't sit down one day and you go, I need to decide what my personality is. I'm going to go get a cabin and I'm going to spend the weekend figuring out my personality. And then I'm never going to think about it ever again. Like, that's insane. Instead, it's evolving all the time. And especially as leaders and as adults and as founders, like, if you're kind of on the right track, you're being introspective. You're thinking about it sometimes. You're reflecting. You're being intentional about it sometimes. Sometimes it's like weekly. Sometimes it's yearly. Like, we all have different cadences, but we know that that's a thing we need to do. But also every single minute of every day, you walk into a room, you're wearing a new outfit. Somebody says, that's a great outfit. You're like, data, I feel good in this outfit. Somebody liked this outfit. Positive feedback. I'm going to wear more of this. Or I'm going to make a comment and you get positive or negative feedback. And that's constant. That's how we exist as humans. So, and then it's further validated how we exist as good leaders and as good founders. The same exact thing is brand. Like, it's something you need to be intentional about, but you need to be getting feedback and iterating all the time, forever.
Well, I think the other part about feedback is also knowing when you get feedback that you don't care about. Because I think that's one thing that's hard, especially early on when you're trying to build a brand and it's not super well established. You're going to hear a lot of positive comments and you're going to hear a lot of negative. There doesn't ever seem to be anyone in the middle. Either they love what you're doing or they hate it, or they love how you talk about it or they hate it. How do you know what to listen to and what not to? Because I think that's honestly for companies that struggle with brand importance, their first kind of iteration is, oh, we've heard some complaints about however the brand is materializing. And they want to like immediately pivot, shift, change. Instead of go, do we care about this feedback? Is this like, weren't we intentional about deciding who we are? I see that especially when a brand is trying to have like more of a hot take type of personality and be very direct with like how they talk about the problems they solve, the market, just even like the nomenclature they use when they're speaking. And sometimes you see CEOs kind of do that like grimace face, like, oh, well, there were like 4 negative LinkedIn comments. Like, I think we need to like start using like really fluffy words now and that mean nothing. So how do you try and figure out like what's helpful feedback and what is actually like, screw it, ignore it, thank you, next?
Okay. I actually have a framework. I'm going to use a buzzy framework word, a mindset to share. As I was working on this thing I'm building, this business that I'm doing, and I'm working with clients, I started to get asked, because when you go from operator to like a helper, like a consultant, an advisor, and you have clients and they're like, but how do you do what you do? Like you have this moment where you're like, I don't know, I just do it. And you have, speaking of being reflective, you have to take a step back and actually put what you do into something that other people can like understand and either be like opt in or opt out. Be like, yep, that feels good, or like, that's not for me. So what I put together is something called Thinking Brave. And it's and you and I didn't talk about like the fact that I was going to be like sharing a framework on your show, but like It's literally this. It's to ask yourself questions about, should I do this or not? Related to a brand. It works for personal brand, works for business brand, helps you make decisions. Okay, brave. Brand, relationships, audacity, values, energy. So you ask yourself, is this way, that's a really good point as far as like your social media team or your person is doing some stuff, is having hot takes, and as the CEO, they don't agree with it. Let's use that as an example. So you go through this exercise and you go, brand, is this thing that we're doing that we're like kind of out of alignment on, is it positioning us where we want to be long term? Not tomorrow, not this afternoon, long term. Relationships, this gets back to the who's it for, why we're doing it. Is it establishing or strengthening relationships with people we want to know, like, and trust us long term? Again, so like, are these hot takes just getting us eyeballs and likes right now? Or are these actually the right people who are going to start following us and are going to know, like, and trust us long term? Audacity. This example is definitely audacious, but like, are we holding space for creativity? Are we playing it safe, or are we trying big things? Values. This is another good example that you brought up with like the trying hot takes versus CEO doesn't love it. Is it in alignment with our values? Like, is this actual, does it feel weird because it's actually not who we are? Or is it in alignment with our values and it's just audacious? And then energy is like, is it giving us positive energy? Like, does the team actually feel like this is a right thing that could deliver us to a breakthrough? Or are we like, is it a grind? So that's, in a nutshell, how I answer that question. It's like, you actually do need to talk about it. You can't be like, no, this is what we're doing because this is what brands are doing now. Or like, nope, shut it down, I don't like it. Like, it gives you a common mindset to be like, hey, this is how we're building this brand long term.
Well, one of the things that you said that I think is so important is this idea of like, does it reflect our values? Because one of the things that I think oftentimes, especially software companies that are creating very innovative technologies and solutions, forget is if you're pushing the boundaries of what's possible from a software perspective, your brand also needs to push the boundaries. Like, you can't be super safe with how you talk. And I think that's like this weird dichotomy that I see happening a lot. You're doing all this really cool stuff from a technology perspective, and then you're talking to me with all of these buzzwords and your content and your ads and your positioning all look like everyone else. Right, exactly. And I'm like, but what do you stand for from a, like, what is your true point of view that's different? I know what your product does, it's really cool, but your brand looks like everyone else's.
Right. And this is where values matter. I mean, everybody's like, oh, values are just something you put on your wall, they're dumb, like nobody needs them. This is how they should show up, is they should help you make decisions. And if as a marketer or as a CEO, you're at an impasse, you should look back at your values and be like, well, this is what we stand for. Or as a marketer, you can be like, hey, you say we're forward thinking as one of our values. This is forward thinking. Like, it should be a place where you find common ground.
It is one of the easiest and fastest ways to like kill a marketer spirit is when you shut stuff down that goes against like what they think they're trying to build from a brand perspective. Yes. I've experienced it numerous times. I'm sure you have as well. So another way to kill a marketer's soul is to get into a conversation on social media about whether or not you should invest in brand or demand gen, or to have that conversation within your company, which I think probably every marketer, especially marketing leaders, have experienced multiple times in their career. And if you're earlier talent and you haven't yet, just wait. It's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming. It's a great soul sucker. So with that, why do you think there is this constant struggle and weird situation where people feel like you have to choose between building a brand and creating demand, and that they cannot live in harmony together?
And that they're not necessary for each other. Like, I just, and for people who know this, it's the most ridiculous conversation. It's like, I finally saw somebody speaking wisdom the other day, and they were like, I am a demand marketer. I am a growth marketer. I am GTM all day long. And I cannot exist without a strong brand leader, because what story am I telling? Like, you want me to decide that? No, I'm about growth. Like, I'm going to take this story and turn it into pipeline and revenue, but I need the story. And so why do I think it happens? Fear. honestly, almost everything can be traced back to fear. And we are in a very like scarcity, weird time in the world. But let's just focus on B2B. There's a lot of scarcity. People are freaked out. Revenue has been harder to get in the last couple of years than most of our lifetimes or of our careers. And in that situation, doing all those things I talked about, like being audacious, being creative, is scary. And putting yourself out there is scary. And so what feels like a sure thing, things that can be directly attributed to revenue, pipeline, leads, conversions, and that's the demand gen stuff. So you have people who don't understand that you have to have the who's it for, why are we doing it, what story are we telling, how is it consistent, even the visualization of the brand, like what is the human-centric story that we're telling. Has always been difficult to measure. It's supposed to be difficult to measure because it's who you are. Like we don't go around doing that as humans. It's hard to do as a business, but it's necessary. And so when you can't prove it, people are afraid. And so they just lean into the things that feel like they can be proven purely because it's metrics that we know and understand and can like circle with a marker a lot easier than we can brand. To me, it just comes back to fear.
Well, what's interesting is that I feel like the thing that everyone misses is no matter how great your demand gen marketer is and that engine, no matter what channel you use, if you don't have a brand, if people have not heard of you before, if they don't know why you exist, I don't care how many ads you run, how much money you spend, how many SDRs you have call people, they're never going to have heard of you and they're not going to want to talk to you.
And this coming from, like, I know we've both been marketers, we've both been CEOs, but like you in particular, Stephanie, like you are a sales powerhouse. Like, I'm just going to talk on you for a minute. Like I'm brand and creative and all the things all day long, but like you are a sales leader. Like you were go to market before go to market was a thing. Like you are CRO, go to market. Like some of the conversations that you and I have had about like how you understand so deeply the money-making model of businesses, how businesses need to work, and the fact that you are sitting here saying, like having raised money, having like done all that you've done, closed massive deals, and you're sitting here saying, brand? Like, brand matters? I mean, I'm glad that you are, because it's so important.
It is so important. And it's one of the most frustrating things, I think, when you talk to like other CEOs or board members or VCs, is they don't understand that you make sales's job so much harder if you don't have a brand.
Yes.
And I know it's hard to measure the squishiness of brand, right? We're not like B2C companies where you can do all these brand studies, which are also super squishy because I'm sorry, like asking someone, have you ever heard of this company before? Or like list the 5 car brands that you know. Like that doesn't really tell me anything, right? Is it aided? Is it unaided? But the reality is brand to me, and this is one of the things that like I've experienced, is when people tell you that they think you're everywhere, that they hear your name, and it's not everyone's in the buying cycle. That's the other misconception I think that impacts this as well. And it kind of like plays into the fear I think that you were talking about earlier, is like 95% of your target market is not looking to buy something. Like, I don't know if a lot of CEOs and board members like actually understand that. So we're talking about the 5% that are. Now that 95%, that's the long term, because if you build a brand and they start to learn about you over time, when they are ready, they're going to remember you and they're going to want to talk to you. But no, they're not going to immediately go, everyone in your target market, why aren't they all in our pipeline right now? Because that's not how it works.
Right. But the thing is that we, one of the things that I keep seeing is that it's, okay, well, it's on, if, I'm like going to try to like stay composed because it just makes me so mad, is like, well, then it's on, if we want brand to matter in a business, it's on the marketer to explain that to the CEO and the VCs. And that's insane because one, as a marketer, going to your CEO or anybody like your board and being like, hey, brand matters, you're immediately going to be asked for proof. Immediately. Okay, tell me why. Tell me what you're going to do with this money I give you. Show me other businesses that are doing it. And you're going to immediately get shut down. So it's like, what's that analogy of like going to a gunfight with like squirt guns or something? Like you're not equipped for success. So what we need is more CEOs, more VCs that do understand and that do know that it's squishy because it's not meant, like you're asking it to be something it's not. And we need more top voices saying this and not asking it to be proven when brand has been around for hundreds of years. And regardless of AI, or before that it was social media, before that it was the internet, like no matter what happens, the thing that remains is human relationships. And what fosters that in business is brand.
One of the things that I started thinking about as soon as you said that, and I know you're in the Boston area right now, but is Drift. Back years ago when Drift first started, they kind of became a poster child for building a brand.
Cult-like following, and I was in it. On a chatbot.
Right.
They were selling a chatbot. And we were all like, I just want to be a part of it. I just need to be close to what you're doing. Yeah.
Well, and I did it too. And I think what was interesting about it is it's not like their chatbot was better than all the other chatbots that existed out there. I mean, it's chat.
Yeah. And I think it was free with HubSpot and Salesforce at the time.
Right. And so, but they built this, and their CEO and their CTO were all out building the brand. Their head of marketing was building a brand. And I think one of the things that all of us became attached to was we wanted to be part of what they were building. And so that's why there were so many companies in B2B that latched on and purchased Drift. And I think it was a poster child for like what building a brand can do. But there isn't a KPI that you can put on a dashboard, or you can run Salesforce reports or HubSpot reports on that show you what the value of building a brand is. It takes time. And I think to your point earlier, VCs need to understand that, but they also have to be in it for the long game. I think that's the other challenge that we face is so many times they're talking about, well, I want the investment to exit in a certain number of years, and that's great. We all would like that to happen for billions of dollars, right? I don't think any CEO, marketing, sales leader that joins an early stage company is looking to, not be sold for billions of dollars these days. Like that is the goal. So, but it takes time. And building a brand causes that. And I think that's the other thing that's squishy on a balance sheet that you don't see is some companies get acquired because of their brand. And VCs need to understand there's a time aspect to it. There's a squishiness to it that's going to give you value when you do go to get acquired down the road. But then also, if you want to create that kind of following of people, it's going to be based on your brand. It's not going to be based on your product functionality, which I don't think a lot of people can wrap their head around. When I go from one company to another, I don't go, oh, I want to use the software because I really like the 4 clicks to do the thing, right? Like everyone changes their software too fast. No one buys that way. They buy based on what their overall, one, does it meet like my functional needs, but what's the overall experience of working with this company, which is its brand.
Which is its brand. And that's the thing too, is it doesn't have to be hundreds of millions of dollars, weeks and weeks and weeks and years and like agencies. It's for a startup, for a solopreneur, like it's how you show up on LinkedIn. It's literally how you show up in the physical rooms you walk into. It's being introspective about who's it for and why am I doing this? And then it escalates from there as far as like, well, how many people do you have? How much time do you have to put towards this? How many resources do you have? And it's not about time or budget per se. It's about commitment and prioritization of brand.
So thinking about that kind of commitment and prioritization, what are some of the tactics that you think are most effective in trying to build a brand?
Starting with the people. So again, if we're talking about startups, it's the founder or whoever's in that founder feeling seat, that CEO seat. And what I always do, what I've done for years and what I do now with clients is I start with interviewing. I interview them and just, as if you're really asking tactically where to start, interview, record it, and then use that in any way you can, whether it's snippets you use on social media, whether it is a podcast, whether it's YouTube shorts. If the video was terrible, use the transcripts. This is a great way to use ChatGPT. Not, hey, now write me a blog post, but like pull some insights from this. Like help me iterate what this could look like as far as some conversation starters. When I get another opportunity to go talk to the CEO, how can I go deeper into conversations that would be compelling? That's where you start. And then outside of that, you talk to, if there are customers, talk to the customers. If there aren't customers, talk to the intended customers and ask questions about like, what are you, just tons of questions, like, what are you experiencing? What kind of problems do you have? If you had a magic wand, what would a solution look like? And just listen. And now we have all of these great tools where you don't have to take notes. You can have something, you can have a AI take notes, and then it's what you do with it and the common threads and the patterns and the compelling statements that turn into those first crumbs of building a brand.
The thing I would add to that too is around content and the importance of how much content should be created around your brand. I think a lot of times people do think, oh, well, now there's AI. Let me just throw this in to ChatGPT, write you a blog post, write you an ebook. And that is going to feel, well, I hope, very inauthentic for your brand, unless maybe you created the ChatGPT. But there's so much content that has to be created, both from like the founder, other leaders in the company itself. How do you you've had content marketing roles as well. How do you think about getting companies to invest in that portion? Because it is hard to measure content tied to revenue. There are ways to do it, but attribution's a hot mess. So how do you think about telling you, I need X number of dollars to hire content marketers, to hire writers. I need to be able to promote this. I need to be able to create original research, or all the things that go into building that brand. How do you advocate for that to the CEO?
Again, it all starts with where you are, as far as like where you are in the life cycle of your company. But in the early days, I can do the very best things in the world as far as marketing is concerned. And until we have an audience, it's going to be a tree falling in the forest with no one around to hear it. And so we've got to invest in building an audience. And again, that can cost money. You can move a lot faster if you put some money behind it, whether that's in hiring people or in promoting things. If you don't have money, it's time and it's effort and it's commitment to doing it right, doing it authentically, to not just, like you said, dear ChatGPT. It's being really intentional about saying like, who's this for? Why are we doing it? And how do we start to communicate that over and over and over in a way that's eloquent and engaging and building relationships with the people we want to know, like, and trust us long term. And so what does that actually look like? One trick that I have found that has worked for me ever since I was a marketing manager was like, when I couldn't get budget, especially for content and brand, when you can't get budget for that, see if there's a path to creating customer content. I rarely ran into people that argued with the need and the desire to have conversations with customers. Sometimes you need to have a chaperone with you, which is frustrating. But other times it's like, yeah, if we can get some people to talk to us and to give us testimonials and to create a video, that's a win for everybody, because we have customers telling us how they feel. Nobody can argue with what they say, and it starts to give you some content to work with. And that can be, depending on what you do with it, that can be free.
So as a marketing leader turned CEO, how did you think about building a brand And what roadblocks did you run into that you maybe created yourself with wearing that different hat, or experience from dealing with just other people who didn't see the value of it?
It's the only thing that made sense to me from day one. And so just like I said, talk to people. The first few weeks of Casted, I was talking to people. It must have been 200 people. I'm sure you were one of them, where it was like, okay, we don't know what this is going to be, but here's the thought. Here's what I'm thinking. Stephanie, have you done a podcast? Why not? What would you do? If you did, what would you need? And just copious notes, because this is all way before AI, as we know it today anyway. And that started to turn into, yes, the product, but it also started to turn into brand. And that brand was intentionally, but also kind of like as a side effect, was tied to me, because everybody had had these conversations with me, got to see kind of my vision, like a peek behind the scenes of my vision, and got to kind of be a part of it from day one. And that was literally, as I started building the company, started building the brand. As we grew, and that founder of a company with nothing turned into an actual CEO role. And at one time we had 50 employees and raising venture capital. As you know, you get pulled into a lot of directions. And there were times when things were going really well. I got a lot of applaud for being like, yeah, you're going and you're speaking at events and you're hosting the podcast and you're doing interviews and you're writing for Forbes. That's great. When things were not going so well, it was like, what are you doing speaking on a stage when we need to be closing deals? Which is tough, because it's like, this is the drumbeat. This is why any deals that are coming our direction, is because there is a steady drumbeat of who we are, why we're doing it, who we serve. And like you said, when the 5% that are willing to buy aren't buying from us right now, I'm still investing in the other 95%. And I don't know, to answer your question, a lot of pounding tables. There were times where it was, everybody saw it and was like, yes. And other times that I was like, this still matters. And so all that to say, even as a CEO, there's somebody else that will constantly be questioning the value of a brand, which you just have to keep pushing through, because as we know, it is like the thing. It's super important.
Well, I've experienced the exact same scenario you're talking about, which is, we love it that you're everywhere, right? Keep doing that. And then why are you everywhere? Why aren't you focused on these other 3 things? Please stop doing that. Okay, you stopped doing that. Why are you not doing that again? Well, because you told me to stop.
Yeah.
What do you want?
I was working with one CEO, and their board keeps encouraging them to write a book. And they're like, I would love to write a book. I'm running a business. And so it's actually comical, because every time they have a board meeting, they're like, but how about that book? And they're like, so yeah, it's.
Well, that's where I think you have the conversation, which I know I've had before, which is great. I'd love to do that. What are we not doing? It's not like we do all this because for anyone that's ever been a CEO, and I know there's a lot of crap that people give CEOs, and some of it is deserved. But I would tell you, I don't think people realize how hard or lonely the job is until you're in it, and how you are never, ever off. Even when you're taking time off, you're not taking time off, because you inevitably are getting texts, Slack messages, phone calls while you're on vacation, because you are no matter how many people you have working for you, you are the tip of the spear, and people want your feedback and opinion. But you're also the person that can, at least for everyone that works in the organization, have the biggest influence, positively or negatively. But you also have to stand up for what you believe in with the board specifically. And I think what you see a lot of times happening, and we've all been in conversations where sometimes it's just easier to be like, okay, fine. Whatever you want, okay, fine. We will try it. I disagree. We'll try it this way. And I think you'll see, I stopped speaking and doing podcasts for a period of time, and we saw pipelines start to dry up, because not immediately, right? It was kind of like this long-term effect. I'm like, well, where did you think they were hearing about us? Right? it's not the things I do from a brand perspective take months or years to come to fruition. But when you stop, whether it's those resources or the budget, you are going to see it impacted in your pipeline down the road.
100%.
And it's the one thing that I feel like we're first to cut, right? Anytime there's a cut that needs to be made, we cut the marketing budget. That's where every company seems to go. And then the first part of the marketing budget that gets cut is brand, or anything that is like not squishy that you can't like immediately tie a lead to, which is a whole other hot mess conversation. The thing I've found that's been really helpful is finding a sales leader that believes in brand. And there aren't that many of them.
Yes.
But if you do find them, the one thing that I think is super important is they often say like marketing is the most important thing in the business, because without marketing and brand creates demand, in my opinion,
100%.
You don't have sales.
Yes.
Right? You just have a really expensive sales team who's super frustrated.
Yeah. And it's banging their heads on the wall because it's just, this is when you have teams that are doing the 1,000 calls a day and all the LinkedIn outreach, and none of it's working. And the conversion rate is like 10% take the call. Like, at what point did we decide that that's a good way to build a business? Because it's measurable. Yeah, but then at least I can measure that, the team is doing 1,000 calls a day and only getting, 10 meetings. And out of those 10 meetings, 0.01 convert into a positive, like that's all measurable. And so at some point we decided that was better than building a strong brand that circumvents that thing entirely, but like isn't measurable, which is silly.
Well, that's why I think there's, especially in early stage companies, this founder-led sales, founder brand, company brand should be so tightly woven together, and you shouldn't. And I think I've made this mistake before, right? Because you were encouraged to grow faster, especially when it comes to sales. But if you don't have those things kind of like in lockstep and creating and growing for a period of time, you're not going to be successful, and you're going to fall victim to, we should cut brand, we shouldn't invest in it, we should do more ads, we should hire more people to make more calls, let's send more emails, let's do all the things that actually hurt your brand,
yes,
not help it. Mm-hmm. Because first impressions matter. And the first time someone in your target market hears from you, and it's someone calling 45 times on their cell and sending emails and LinkedIn
that's your
DMs,
brand.
That's your brand. 100%. So I know it's almost impossible to measure brand effectiveness in a way that would make a lot of people that love KPI dashboards happy. How would you think about knowing whether or not your brand is moving in the right direction? Like, are there some like leading and lagging indicators that we could hold on to as leaders to try and think about it in that way?
One is something, I know it's anecdotal, but it's important, which is find a way to tally the times that people say things like, "Oh, I've never heard of you before," and this, like what you said earlier, "Never heard of you before," like to the, "Oh, I've been seeing you guys all over the place," or, "Oh, yeah, I think I've heard of you." That's brand. That's brand awareness. That's one. Something that actually is more measurable is audience growth. Audience growth of the right people. So you can't be everywhere. You can't measure everything. And it's directional. It is not attribution, but it is directional to say, let's just say we're a B2B. LinkedIn tends to be good for most B2B companies. Let's say you've done nothing on LinkedIn ever. You're a brand new company. Watch LinkedIn. Like, if you're investing time, maybe money, definitely energy into building your audience on LinkedIn, see if it's growing. It's going to take a while, but see if it's growing and see if you're reaching the right people. Is it just students? Students are wonderful, but if students are not your buyers, students and, like people's friends and family, then maybe you're doing cool stuff, but it's not the right fit. So like, see if there's audience growth in the places that you're investing with the right people. And then I think the third thing on top of that is engagement. Are those right people engaged? Are they showing up? Are they RSVPing for your events? Are they taking meetings? Are they liking and commenting on things that you're sharing? Are they opening your emails? All of that stuff, those are the lagging indicators of, hey, we're doing this thing.
I love to do screenshots of that because I think it's especially for board decks where they're like, what's the value of the brand? Well, one easy way to do that is every time someone on sales mentions something like that, you see it on social media, you see it in a Slack channel from like someone on customer success, you get referrals. Like that is one way to visualize how your brand is being created and working in the market, is those kind of like anecdotal. And I love it from a screenshot perspective because I feel like when you talk about it, everyone's like, sure. But it's like, no, here are like screenshots from like someone filled out a form today to request a demo and we asked them where they heard of us and they said everywhere.
Yeah.
Like that.
There you go.
Here's the company, here's the person, right? It helps create, I think, that this is real, this is objective, this is not like Stephanie's opinion of like what our brand is being measured as.
And you need to hold your ground with that. And like, you are so good with this. Like, I think whether you are a marketing specialist, just getting started, or you're the CEO of the company and you're having a conversation, it's really, I've seen this happen. I've done this, to make that slide and be like, here's just some nice things that people are saying about us. As you can see, it's making a difference. No, you need to be like, hey, before you write this off as anecdotal and like warm fuzzies, this is real. This matters. If you notice, the person that said this thing is the decision maker of one of our key accounts. This person that said this other thing is like a potential angel investor who thinks that what we're doing is really special. Like, you have to hold your ground and not let those things be written off as like, okay, fine, but show me the real numbers. Like, this is it.
Is the real number.
That's the real numbers. Yeah.
Right? So thinking about brand fails, because that's the other thing that I think oftentimes can be a challenge, is you're building a brand and you have, whether it's something, I feel like social media is like the biggest way this happens. Like there's something horrible that comes out about your brand, you make some sort of misstep. How do you think about rectifying that quickly in a way that's authentic? Because I think that's the other big area a lot of companies stumble. And especially if you're doing anything on TikTok, you can blow up positively on TikTok really quickly. And you can also like collapse on TikTok very, very, maybe even faster. So thinking about that, how do you help companies have a plan for when something inevitably goes wrong and it's going to negatively impact your brand?
So I don't do the sports ball, but there's a saying that the best offense is good defense. The best defense is good offense. I think it works both ways. And I think that the best way to get yourself out of a bad situation is to have already established trust, right? So again, think of it as people. Like if you have someone in your life that you trust implicitly, you're good friends, you know their character, you know their personality, and something happens, either whether it's true or not, you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Either that, like, if they say, no, this didn't actually happen, it's not true, you're going to be like, okay, I think I believe you, I'm going to give it another shot. Or if they're like, yep, I made a mistake and it's not going to happen again, you're going to be like, okay, you're going to be more likely to forgive and move on. Same thing goes with brands. And you have to, like, if you think that you're going to weather being canceled somewhere and you haven't done the work of building the trust and you're just a hip and cool, like funny, like catchy hot takes, people are going to be like, yep, saw that one coming, done, on to the next. But if you've established, bringing people, making your brand more human invites risk. But it also is the only way, it's the only way to build meaningful trust that will weather the inevitable storms. Layoffs, that's not even like something controversial usually, but like if your company has to do layoffs, like if you are a good company and people know you and trust you, they're going to be that much more likely to be like, how can we help? As opposed to like, we got to stay away from them. So it's trust. And if you haven't done the work of building it, you're going to have a much harder time making through it. But what better time to start than immediately?
Yeah. The other thing I'd add would be being authentic throughout all of it. Hopefully you've done that as part of your brand. But I think in any situation that comes up where it's somewhat negative or perceived to be negative about your brand, being authentic and with your response is super, super important, because I think people can see through that, and they can see through the bullshit so much faster these days.
100%. Yep.
Okay, so last question.
Okay.
What is your biggest go-to-market confession?
Go-to-market confession. I think, I bet a lot of people share this with me, and it's like, what does go-to-market even mean? I think that's my, like, what do you think it is? Because this is what I think it is, and I think that's what I'm at. It's like ABM and go-to-market. Like, do we know what we're talking about? That's my being vulnerable with my question there. It's like, what is that?
You've been listening to GTM Confessions. If you love what you've heard, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. And don't forget to tell a friend.